Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum. Well, here we are back again with another video, and in this video I'm going to be addressing some objection that is raised against the cosmology mentioned in the Quran. Alright, so here's the argument. So the detractors would say that Quran says the earth was created before the heaven, and that is unscientific, and they would bring two verses basically, that is Surah Al-Baqarah verse number 29 and Surah Fussilat chapter 41 verse number 11. So the verse of Surah Al-Baqarah verse number 29, it reads, هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن سبع سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم. It is He who created for you all that which is on the earth, then He directed Himself to heaven, His being above all creation, and made them 7 heavens, and He is knowing of all things. So the word in question is thumma, which is translated as then. Thumma stawa ila sama, then He directed Himself to heaven. The word thumma does mean then. However, the word thumma is not restricted to then. The word thumma is not just used to describe sequence. It can also mean moreover. Commenting on these verses, scholars like Fakhruddin Razi, Imam al-Baydawi, rahimahullah, they mentioned this, the word thumma here refers to moreover. And they were not writing to fit in the scientific narrative. They lived 800 years ago. So they were purely talking from linguistic point of view. Alright, so here the word thumma would be translated as moreover. So the translation would become, moreover He directed Himself to heaven. And exactly the same thing can be said for the verse of Surah Fussilat. The translation would be, moreover He directed Himself to the heaven. And also the detractors also say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in several places in the Quran mentions that He created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. They would say, but in Surah Fussilat it says 8 days. It does not say 8 days, but they think it is saying that. So they would say the verse 9 of Surah Fussilat talk about the creation of earth in 2 days. Thereafter verse number 10 is talking about the placement of mountains and the providing of sustenance in 4 days. Thereafter verse number 12 of Surah Fussilat talks about the heaven in 2 days. So they would add them up and say it is talking about 2 plus 4 plus 2 is equal to 8 days. But we have already saw the meaning of the word thumma. It can also mean moreover. So the verse 11 of Surah Fussilat, it would read, moreover He directed Himself to the heaven, instead of then. The word thumma would be moreover. So that would mean the 2 days mentioned in the verse 12 is included in that 6 days. So the 2 days mentioned in verse 12 is not addition, that is included in that 6 days. So I hope it's clear so far that the Quran is not saying the earth was created before the heaven. And for example, there is a verse in chapter 79 verse number 30, وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَهَاهَا, and after that we spread the earth. And the word used in chapter 79 verse number 30 is not thumma, that is ba'da, after. And before this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about heaven. So this verse can be used to suggest that the earth was created after the heaven, which is completely in accordance with modern science. I hope it's clear so far. And now here is something even more interesting. Now let's say we don't translate the word thumma in both those verses as moreover, and we just keep it as then. Then He directed Himself to the heaven. Tell you what, even then there is no problem whatsoever. Here is why. Because when we read these verses of Surah Al-Baqarah verse 29, Surah Fussilat verse number 11, it does not say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heaven thereafter. It says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fashioned it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala proportioned it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completed it. So that means what? The heavens were created already. And also in Islamic cosmology, Sama, the heaven, includes everything that is above us, For example, the atmosphere, the sun, the moon, the stars, all the celestial bodies. The Sama would also include all the 7 heavens and what is beyond them. For example, the Arsh of Allah, the Kursi. So Sama would also include them. So going back to the verse, the heavens were already created before the creation of earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only talking about the proportion to give them like sort of final touch, to perfect them even further. And since we live in the first heaven and we have only observed the part of the first heaven, وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِيحَ, we don't know what is beyond the first heaven. So that would be completely metaphysical for us. So you see, when we translated the word thumma as then, there was no problem. When we translate the word thumma as moreover, there's still no problem. And here is also something quite profound. The same verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 29, it ends with وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٍ, and He is knowing of all things. So it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knew that the detractors would try to problematize this verse, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I am knowing of all things. I know how I have created this universe. I know what I have mentioned in my book. Subhanallah, this is so profound. And also look at the verse number 13 of Surah Fussilat. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says after mentioning that? Subhanallah, so profound. Alright, finally, there is one last thing I would like to address in this video. So the detractors would say that it is mentioned in Quran that universe was created in 6 days, and we know from science, they would say we know from science that it took billions of years. So here is a simple response to this. So when Quran says 6 days, it does not mean that 6 earthly days, okay? It means six long period, 6 epoch. It is not talking about the 24-hour earthly days. But they would still argue back and bring, for example, verse like Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 117. Originator of the heaven and the earth, when He decrees a matter, He only says to it be, and it is. So they would argue back and say the 6 days does not mean that long epoch, that long period. That means quickly, they would say. So here are a few quick responses to this. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says kun fayakun, be and it is, so it does not necessarily mean the creation has to be completed instantaneously. It can also mean the initiation of the creation has begun and not the completion. Now another response would be the time is relative. That means in different part of universe, the time passes differently. For some, the time is passing quickly, and for others, it's really slow. And of course, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is not bound by time either, because He is the one who has created time. So I hope this helps, inshaAllah ta'ala. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That's all for this video. If you have got any question, suggestion, you can let me know in the comment section below. And until we meet next time. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayh. Barakallahu fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.